Nadia had been standing at that drinks table for 11 minutes. She knew because she had counted. Not the minutes exactly. She had counted the bubbles in her champagne glass. First the ones near the rim, then the ones climbing up from the bottom in those thin, lazy chains. She had given herself something to look at that was not the door, and it had worked, right up until the moment it didn't. The door opened. Elias walked in. She had been quietly, privately, desperately relying on him looking worse. He did not look worse. He looked exactly the same, that easy, unhurried way he had of moving through a room, like the room had been arranged specifically for him, and he was simply accepting the arrangement. Dark jacket, hair the same, jaw the same, everything exactly the same, which was the problem, which was the whole problem, because if he had come in looking tired, or bloated, or even just slightly less than what she remembered, her body would have processed that and moved on. Instead, this. She looked at her champagne. She took a sip. 11 minutes of careful, deliberate, almost architectural not wanting, and then the door opened, and 12 seconds later, she was a person standing at a drinks table, holding a glass with both hands, like it might float away. Lord, give me patience. The venue was beautiful, which she resented. These things should be ugly when you are having them. They should be fluorescent lit and smell of carpet cleaner, and have those plastic chairs with the split in the seat that catches the back of your thigh. Instead, it was exposed brick and Edison bulbs, and that particular quality of candlelight that makes everyone look like they are starring in the kind of film where nobody ends up alone. There was a floral arrangement the size of a small child on every table. The music was tasteful. The food was small and perfect. Nadia had arrived 20 minutes early because she was always early, which meant she had been standing here when the beautiful room was still hollow, and she had looked around at all of it, the bricks, the flowers, the low warm light, and she had thought, this is a venue designed to make you feel like something is beginning. She had not thought about what happens when you are the person for whom nothing is beginning. She was thinking about it now. She smiled at someone she half recognized from the couple's engagement photos. She laughed at something a woman in a green dress said about the tube. She accepted a tiny square of something with cream cheese from a tray and ate it without tasting it. She was very good at this. The performance of a person at a party, the surface texture of fine. She had been practicing it for 6 months, which was how long it had been since Elias and she had stood in the hallway of his flat and said things to each other that landed like furniture falling, heavy and permanent, rearranging everything. She had practiced so thoroughly that sometimes she forgot she was performing. Then the door opened, and she remembered. She did not watch him. This is important. She was not watching him. She was talking to a man named Kofi who worked in sustainable architecture and had opinions about insulation that he was sharing at impressive length, and she was nodding, and she was present, and she was absolutely carefully, deliberately not watching Elias move through the room. This is why she almost missed it. But rooms do this thing, she had noticed it before, where your body tracks something your brain has instructed it to ignore, and then without warning, your eyes go where they were told not to go, and then you have to deal with what you see. Her eyes went there. Elias was standing near the bar. He was talking to someone, a woman, dark hair, the kind of effortless dress that takes a long time to look effortless, and he was smiling, that full, unguarded smile she had catalogued without meaning to, and then his hand came up. Slow. Her hair had fallen across her face, a single strand, and Elias, without any hesitation, without any thought, because it was instinct, because it was him, reached out and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture lasted maybe 2 seconds. Nadia felt them both. She went somewhere, not back, not 5 years, somewhere sideways, into a hotel room in Porto where the light was coming through wooden shutters in those long evening bars, and she had been lying there with the words right there, right at the surface, and she had held them so long they had left a bruise on the inside of her chest that she still sometimes pressed with her thumb to check it was real. She had not said them. She had thought, later. There is time. Later. She looked at the champagne in her hand. Warm. She looked at it the way you look at something that has failed at its one job. The glass was supposed to be cold. She was supposed to be fine, and here they both were. The bubbles had slowed. There were fewer of them now, the small ones near the rim barely moving, the chains from the bottom thinning out. She watched a single bubble climb the side of the glass and disappear at the surface and not be replaced. Kofi said something about cavity walls. She said absolutely yes. She was moving toward the door with the particular velocity of a woman who has made a decision she is calling fresh air, because she has not yet decided to call it leaving. Her heels on the floor, the music behind her, the floral arrangements on every table still doing their job, beautiful and indifferent. She was not watching where she was going. She walked into a wall. The wall was warm. She took a step back. Her heel caught. That seam in the floor, the slight ridge at the edge of the wooden boards, and she shifted her weight wrong, and the champagne went. Not catastrophic, not a scene, just a slow wave over the rim of the glass that rolled down the side and landed on her thumb. She stared at her thumb. The wall said, Nadia. She looked up. Dominic Adeyemi was standing in front of her in a dark suit that cost more than she spent on food in 3 months, and he was looking at her with an expression she could not immediately classify. Not quite concern, not quite amusement, somewhere in the narrow corridor between them where she wasn't sure she wanted to be standing. She had met him at a conference on urban development 14 months ago. She had disagreed with him in front of 60 people about a regeneration project in South London that she thought was going to erase the community it claimed to be helping, and she had said so, with sources, and he had pushed back, and they had argued with a precision and a mutual courtesy that had felt like the most honest conversation she'd had in years. At the end of the panel they had shaken hands. The handshake had lasted. She had counted this also, after, in the taxi home, half a second too long. She had not thought about that. She had not thought about it extensively, on multiple occasions, including recently. You still do that, he said. Do what? Focus on the wrong thing when you're about to fall. She looked at her thumb. The champagne was drying, sticky. She looked at the glass, still in her other hand, with the possessiveness of someone who has been holding something for so long they have forgotten they are holding it. I wasn't about to fall, she said. No, he said. You caught yourself. The room continued behind her. Music. Someone's laughter. Somewhere, Elias with his hand coming up, doing what hands do when they have memorized someone, reaching without thinking, because that's what years do to a person. They teach your hands. She did not turn around. They ended up outside. This was not decided so much as arrived at. The way you arrive at conclusions you have technically been moving toward for a while without naming them. One of them moved toward the glass doors that opened onto the street, and the other followed, or didn't, and here they were, the venue steps, London in July doing what London does in July, which is rain softly and without apology, the orange light from the street lamps, turning everything amber and slightly cinematic in a way the city didn't seem to notice or care about. A car went past. Then a man on a bicycle with a delivery bag that had a logo for a sushi place she had been meaning to try. The ordinary machinery of the city, operating exactly as it should, indifferent to what was happening on the steps. Dominic didn't ask about Elias. This was the first kind thing he did, and she registered it as kindness by how much she braced for the opposite. He talked instead about the regeneration project, the one she had torn apart on the panel 14 months ago. It had collapsed in planning, he said, 6 months after the conference. The community groups she had cited had organized, had put together the kind of coalition that sits in council meetings and knows the procedure better than the officials running them, and the developer had quietly withdrawn. You were right, he said. I didn't tell you at the time because I was annoyed. She laughed. Real, not the performance of laughter, the actual thing, the slightly undignified thing that comes out when something catches you with your guard down. You were annoyed, she said. You had better sources. That tends to be how being right works. I'm aware, he said, and something moved at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile, or was a smile that had been taken apart and put back together slightly differently, so that it communicated things a normal smile doesn't communicate. She looked at the street. The rain was doing that thing where it wasn't quite heavy enough to justify going inside, but was consistent enough to be a presence, a texture on the air, small and steady and persistent. Her hair was picking it up. The shoulders of her dress were picking it up. She was aware of being rained on and not minding, which told her something about where she was, internally. "You were about to leave," Dominic said. "I'm still thinking about it. Stay." She looked at him. Not a command. Not a negotiation. The word had landed the way certain words land when the person saying them has been carrying it for a moment before they put it down, and the weight of the carrying is part of the weight of the word itself. She looked at the champagne glass still in her hand. Warm. Empty now. The last of it had gone when her heel caught. She had been carrying an empty glass across a room, toward a door, in the direction of a cab, and she had not noticed it was empty. She had been holding something that was nothing for quite some time. She did not stay, but she didn't leave alone. Dominic walked with her to the end of the street. Just the end of the street. He was clear about this. She was clear about this. Both of them deploying a mutual clarity that they both understood was not entirely honest, but was the kind of small dishonesty that keeps things from going too fast in a direction neither of them has decided yet. The corner was where she was going to get a cab. She stood at the corner. London streets at this hour were doing their thing. A bus, amber light slicing across wet tarmac, two people arguing pleasantly outside a chicken shop about something that was clearly not really about the chicken, a fox crossing the road at the far end with the slow, unhurried confidence of something that owns the night. She was going to say something practical, something about the app, about surge pricing, about it being a Sunday, something that closed things off neatly at the seams. Dominic took her hand, not urgently, not in the way that announces itself or asks for acknowledgement. He took her hand the way you take someone's hand when you are at a crossing and the traffic is unclear, and you have simply decided, without ceremony, without drama, that this particular person is not something you are willing to leave to chance. Her thumb was still slightly sticky from the champagne. The rain was still doing its small, persistent thing. She did not pull away. She stood there at the corner and the world continued. The bus, the people, the fox now gone into a gap between buildings, and she held on to something that was not empty, and she did not name what it was, and neither did the night, and that was fine, that was enough, that was the exact right amount of knowing for one evening in the rain. Inside the venue, if you had been watching, and she was not watching, not anymore, Elias would have been standing near the bar with his hand having done what hands do. The woman beside him would have laughed at something. The music would have continued. The Edison bulbs would have gone on being warm and beautiful and indifferent. Nadia would not have seen any of it. She was at the corner of the street, in the rain, with a man she had argued with in front of 60 people about the moral architecture of a regeneration project, holding his hand, thinking about nothing in particular, which is the thing you think about when you have stopped thinking about the thing you had been thinking about without meaning to for 6 months. This is not a story about forgetting. She did not forget Elias that night. You do not forget 3 years. You do not forget the specific quality of someone's attention, the way they made you feel like you were interesting to look at, the hotel room in Porto with the wooden shutters and the long evening light. You do not forget the words you held in your throat until they left a bruise. You just stop checking the bruise. Not that night, not even that week, but the hand at the corner was the beginning of stopping. She knew that, in the way you know things that you are not ready to say out loud, not because they are not true, but because saying them makes them a thing that can be examined and doubted, and she did not want to examine it yet. She wanted to stand at the corner. She wanted to hold the hand. The cab came eventually. They stood there until it did, longer than they needed to, longer than the cold and the rain technically warranted, and she got in, and he did not, and the cab pulled away, and she watched the corner disappear, and she thought about the champagne glass. The way it had gone warm without her noticing, the way she had been carrying it across the room, and it had been empty, and she had not realized. London went past the cab window, in its usual arrangement of lights and wet streets, and the particular anonymity of a city at night that has too many stories to pay attention to yours. She was not thinking about Elias. This was not the same as not thinking about Elias. She was aware of the place in her chest where the thought would go if she let it, the way you are aware of a bruise without pressing it. She could feel the shape of it. The 3 years, the Porto Hotel, the handshake, the hallway, the furniture falling things they had said to each other, and she let the shape be there without pressing it. The cab driver had the radio on low, something instrumental, something with a piano, the kind of music that fills space without demanding anything from you. She looked at her thumb. The champagne had dried completely. There was nothing to see there. She pressed the pad of her thumb against the side of her index finger anyway, a small private gesture, a checking. The corner of her mouth moved. Her name is Nadia Osei. She is 28 years old. She grew up in South London, the actual South London, not the South London that estate agents have been quietly rebranding for the last decade, and she went to a school on a scholarship that she earned, and then spent 4 years at feeling like she was wearing someone else's uniform in a way that had nothing to do with the actual uniform. She knows how to be in rooms she was not designed for. She knows how to perform the version of herself that takes up exactly the right amount of space. She knows how to hold something past the point where it has gone cold without noticing, and she knows, or she is beginning to know, on the back seat of a cab going south through wet streets, how to put it down. Dominic Adeyemi is 34 years old. There are things she knows about him. He runs a property development company that, unlike the one she tore apart on the panel, operates with a structure that requires community consultation at every stage. She knows this because she looked it up after the conference. In a way she described to herself as professional curiosity, and not in any other way. He is Nigerian-British, London-born, grew up in Peckham 2 miles from where she grew up. He has an office in Canary Wharf that she has seen in a business magazine, large windows, a long meeting table, a view of the river. There are things she does not know about him. She is not thinking about either list particularly. She is just thinking about the hand at the corner, the weight of it, the decision it contained, without making a ceremony of the decision. I have simply decided that this particular person is not something I am willing to leave to chance. He had not said this. He had just taken her hand. But that is what hands say when they move like that. The next time she saw him was a Thursday. Not because they had arranged it on Sunday at the corner. They had not. She had gotten in the cab, he had not. The cab had pulled away, and she had not texted him, and he had not texted her, and she had gone home and made tea and sat on her sofa and done the thing she always did after a party, which was take her earrings out and feel the relief of it, and then sit there for a while without being anything in particular. The Thursday was at a coffee shop in Brixton that they both apparently used, which was the kind of coincidence that is not a coincidence in a city where you orbit certain places, because they feel like yours and then you keep finding the same people in them. She was reading something on her phone. He came in and saw her and did not pretend he hadn't, which she appreciated, and he ordered his coffee and then walked over and said, "Is this a deliberate choice or did you just sit in the one with the broken chair?" She had not noticed the chair. She noticed it now. She shifted. The chair wobbled. "Deliberate," she said. He sat down across from her with his coffee, not asking, sitting, and they talked for 40 minutes, and she missed her 11 o'clock call and rescheduled it, without feeling bad about it, which was information. This is what happened over the following weeks. They talked about the city, about what gets built and what gets erased, and how those decisions are made, and by whom and for whom. They talked about her work. She was a housing policy analyst, which meant she spent her days reading documents that described, in the language of bureaucracy, the ongoing question of who gets to stay. They talked about his work, about the gap between what development is supposed to do and what it actually does, and they disagreed about several things and agreed about several others, and the disagreements were better than the agreements. He texted with punctuation, which she found both funny and somehow revealing, full sentences, proper commas, the occasional semicolon. She started doing it back as a kind of joke that became not a joke. They went for a walk along the river one Saturday that lasted 3 hours and covered several topics including the politics of green spaces, a film she had seen twice and he hadn't seen at all, whether the fox she had seen crossing the road the night of the party was the same fox she had seen crossing a different road near her flat on a Tuesday, and whether the existence of a fox population that moves through South London in a specific geography meant anything about the way the city was or was not connected. She went home from the walk and sat on her sofa and took her shoes off and thought, oh, not about love. Not yet, not named as that. Just the quality of his attention, the way he listened to her like she was saying something worth the listening, the way he pushed back when he disagreed, not to win but because he was genuinely interested in what she would say next. She pressed the pad of her thumb against the side of her index finger, checked something. The bruise was still there. Of course it was. You do not stop carrying a thing because you put it down at a corner in the rain. But it was different, not smaller, just differently located, less central, less the first thing her hands found when they weren't occupied. She told her friend Amma about him. Amma, who had known her since they were 11, who had held her phone on the sofa 6 months ago, while she cried about Elias in the specific ugly way you only cry in front of people who knew you before you learned to be composed about things, who had made her tea and said nothing, who understood the shape of what 6 months of not saying it had cost her. Dominic, Amma said, testing the name. We're just talking. The last time you said you were just talking to someone you went to Porto with them. That's not, Nadia stopped. We haven't been to Porto. Yet. We're just talking. Amma put her mug down. Nadia, she said. You missed an 11 o'clock call. It was reschedulable. You have never rescheduled an 11 o'clock call in the entire time I have known you. You had an 11 o'clock call the morning after you moved flats. You had an 11 o'clock call the morning after your mum's thing. Silence. We're just talking, Nadia said. Amma looked at her. Okay, Amma said, with the specific gentleness of someone who is choosing not to press because she doesn't need to, because she already knows, because some things don't need pressing. There was a dinner. Not a date. They were still in the careful choreography of not calling it a date, which she was aware was its own kind of thing, its own kind of honesty about what they were doing, which was moving towards something with both of them pretending to be still. A restaurant in Brixton that he had suggested and she had agreed to, and they both arrived at the same time from different directions, and this pleased her, in a way she did not examine. The food was good, the conversation was good. At some point the restaurant went from loud to quieter around them, and she realized it had gotten late, the kind of late that happens when you are not watching the time because you have stopped needing to track it. He paid. She had her card out. He said, next time. She said, that's presumptuous. He said, yes. He walked her to the corner where the cab had come from before. The same corner, or close enough. The same street, the same rain, which was London and therefore could always be relied upon to provide the same rain. She thought about the last time they had stood here. The hand. She thought about the champagne glass and the warmth of it. She was not holding anything this time, both hands free. There was a specific, slight vertigo in that, having nothing to hold, standing at a corner in the rain, not performing anything. He took her hand, the same way, the decision without the ceremony. She looked at their hands. You keep doing that, she said. I know. Without asking. Would you like me to ask? She thought about it. No, she said. The rain, the corner, the city going about its business in the middle distance, the bus stop with its orange light, the fox, a different fox, or the same fox, she would never know, crossing the road at the far end with that same slow authority. She held his hand at the corner. What she was not thinking about, standing at the corner, the party venue and its Edison bulbs, the champagne glass, warm in both hands, the gesture, his hand coming up, slow, deliberate, that single strand of hair, that woman's face turning toward him. What she was thinking about, the hand in hers, not because she had stopped thinking about the other thing, not because 6 months of careful not wanting and 3 years of something large and real had simply dissolved at a corner in the rain. She was thinking about the hand in hers because it was there, because it was warm, because it had decided she was worth deciding without making a ceremony of the decision. This is a true story. It is true in the way that all the real things are true, not perfectly, not without the bits that don't fit neatly, not without the version of events that the other people involved would tell if asked. Every real story has those other versions, the ones you can't access, the ones that have their own corners and their own rain and their own hand that someone didn't pull away from. Elias has a version. The woman beside him at the party has a version. Even the champagne glass, if champagne glasses could narrate, would have a version, something about being held too long, about going from cold to warm in the grip of a person who was not paying attention, about the slow, quiet departure of the bubbles. Nadia's version is this one. The party, the gesture, the warm glass, the corner, the hand she didn't pull away from. She told Amma about the restaurant 2 weeks later. She told her about the corner, and the hand, and what she had said, and what he had said. Amma listened. When she finished, Amma picked up her mug and held it with both hands. The way you hold something warm, the way you hold it on purpose, for the warmth of it. And she looked at Nadia over the rim. The champagne glass, she said. What? You told me about it. From the party. How it had gone warm and you hadn't noticed. Nadia looked at her. Yeah. And now? Nadia thought about the corner, the hand. Both her hands free and then not free. Now I know what I'm holding, she said. Amma nodded. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Some things that did not happen in this story. Elias did not see her leave the party with Dominic. He may have noticed she left. She cannot know this. She did not call him or text him or find out how the woman with the dark hair ended up being a part of his life, or for how long. She does not know if what she saw at the party was the beginning of something for him, or the middle of it, or something else entirely. She left that alone. This is the part that is harder than the corner and the hand, leaving alone the things you cannot know. Stopping the inventory of someone else's gestures, someone else's hand coming up in a room with Edison bulbs and flowers the size of small children, someone else's slow, deliberate tenderness directed at someone who is not you. She did not do this immediately. She did it slowly, the way you put weight on a healing thing, a little, then a little more, testing. Some mornings she would be standing at the kettle and a thought would come in sideways, the Porto light, the held words, the bruise, and she would let it come in and then let it go past without pressing it. The bruise got smaller, or maybe she stopped checking it so often that it stopped being the first thing she found. She still can't tell you which one. Dominic asked her once. This was months later, which means they had arrived at the place where you ask things you don't ask, at a corner in the rain, the place where enough time has passed that questions are not bids for something, they are just questions. He asked her once what she had been thinking about at the party before she walked into him. She thought about it. Surface tension, she said. He looked at her. The champagne, she said. The bubbles. What keeps them from breaking at the surface? He was quiet for a moment. And what keeps them, he said. Not much, she said. The surface. Just the surface. He nodded. He didn't press. This was the second kind thing he did, and the third, and the ongoing thing, the not pressing, the letting her carry her own weight in her own hands, the trust that she would put it down when she was ready. She was working on it. She was getting there. A corner, a hand, a champagne glass gone warm in both palms, the bubbles, slow and fewer, the small chains from the bottom thinning out, one last bubble climbing the glass and disappearing at the surface. She put the glass down. She is still putting it down, but she put it down.